So I think um, where the thought should start for anybody who is planning to apply to college is thinking about personal fit and recognizing that personal fit includes first the student and their aspirations and professional goals and things like that, but also the family, because the truth of the matter is that the family goes to the college too when you leave. They're involved. They're involved throughout this entire process. So finding the fit that works for all involved, and whatever that means in your case. I'll say this: there are nearly 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States alone. Truthfully, it's a high percentage that you're going to find somewhere that's perfect for you. Now, what perfect for you means is hopefully what we'll decipher out through this evening. So starting at the beginning, your college search process starts the day you step foot in high school, ninth grade. You began to build the resume of which you'll share come the college search process. That said, you also start to develop your idea of college in your head. And I think that in doing that, you begin to decide where you're going to apply. Now, my talking points are going to be a little bit straightforward. I try to keep it as simple as possible. But to be fair, it's a very convoluted process. There's a lot of things that's going to happen. You're going to figure out what your college is through trial and error. But hopefully, some of the things that I talk about tonight um, will help you out. And first, I think you need to actualize a plan when deciding where you want to apply to college. There are things that you can look for as far as major, and that's probably the initial thought. Even if you don't know what you want to major in, if you're undecided, which applying to college as most students are, if you have career goals or interest in high school that you think that you will want to study, you need to make sure that those offerings are available at whatever institution that you're looking for. So you started with your particular interest. I think we'll begin to narrow down from 4,000 the schools that you're looking for. And even getting into junior and senior year, realizing that now you have a little bit more understanding of what college should be for you, thinking about those areas of study and how they pertain to your learning styles and what you're hoping to do post graduation. You start to kind of cater your college list to you as an individual. Now, going back out to the broader lens, the United States is regional. There are colleges in the Northwest, Southwest, East Coast, Northeast, plenty in the Northeast, Southeast, things like that that you should think about. So you should think about where you want to be. And I believe that begins to bring in the family aspect. Are you trying to stay close to home? Are you comfortable with leaving, the nest and being far away from your parents? Do you have the plans to getting home if you need to? All of those things are integral in deciding where to apply, right? Figuring out the region might be probably the part of most likely the easiest part of this process because the more you dwindle down, the more specific colleges get. So deciding where you want to be will help shape and mold your college list. And again, those conversations start pretty early in your high school experience, and they start when you have those conversations with your caretakers. They start when you are watching TV and see a sweatshirt, or are intrigued by a football game or a college event. You begin to shape those things subconsciously early in your high school experience. But when you get to the point where you have an idea of where you want to go, that begins to shape and mold your your college search process. After you have the region, this is when it begins to get fun. You start to decide what you want college to look like for you. I think that is second or third point in the plan, because you know, and the you I'm talking to is the student. As parents, hopefully many of you have already gone, and I think as an alumni event, you probably went to the college, so you've done your college search. But the you I'm talking about is the student. What does learning look like for you? How are you best suited to be successful in the classroom? A lot of the times when I'm doing presentations, I talk about community curation. And I think that that will be a talking point that I'll get into later. But what type of community do you want to be in, and do you see yourself contributing to? Because that's another part of the process that people tend to forget about, is that we're not only admitting you to be a student, like you're a part of a living community when you come to campus. So that is when you begin to kind of filter out the different schools. So are you looking for a larger, public flagship, research one university, or are you looking for a medium size, with some attributes that are unique as far as location or offerings? So maybe a school that's 2,000 to 4,000 students that offers engineering, or you need a nursing program. So you need a college, excuse me, that's near or appended to a university hospital. You begin to kind of shape and mold that list, again, going back to the things that you're interested in, right? Once you figure that out, then you begin to look into the region that you're in. And that begins to shape and mold the list. Now, the advice that I give people when thinking about the college list, your list should be long early. It should be extensive. It should have multiple different types of colleges on it. It should have multiple different places where you want to go to school and things like that. Because what you're doing is you're researching and understanding what the colleges offer. Because you're gonna find that certain types of school will offer certain types of experiences. But even though those experiences are similar at each institution, excuse me, um, there are subtle differences that may intrigue you much more than one or the other. So now that you know the region that you want to be in, and you've kind of figured out what it is you want to do, or what type of school that you want to go to, and what type of learning experience that you're seeking, this is when the fun begins, right? Because this is now where your plan goes into action. Visiting, visiting colleges is probably the best way to visualize yourself on a college campus. And as an accessibility practitioner, visiting colleges may be difficult for people. However, through the past few years, virtual connection has become much more in depth and much more educational. So even if you can't physically get to these institutions, I advise or hope that you take advantage of virtual connection as well. But the goal of the visit um, is more than just seeing the college. It's more than just taking a trip and stepping foot on campus. The goal of the visit is, of course, to learn about the things from the information sessions and the tour. But more than that, it's about how you feel while you're there. Thinking about my time at the college and what I saw during. If I knew now, if I knew then what I knew now, I still would go to the college, because I think like there were things there that spoke to me as an individual. But visiting these colleges affords you the opportunity to ask questions that you may not have been able to ask in a high school visit or a college visit. And I'll talk more about those things as well. But it offers you the opportunity to connect with the people on campus, and it allows you to connect with the campus as far as what, as the young kids say, vibes do you get? How do you feel? Are you seeing happiness? Do you feel that this is a place where you're safe and can thrive, and all of the things that will promote success in college? That is what the visit does. And your visit list should be long. So if the parents aren't here and they're thinking about how to plan this out, I think junior year spring break, take a trip. You can start before that, and I think fortunately, if you live in a state that has you know a pretty good state system, and it also has some smaller liberal arts colleges or has some smaller focused colleges and things like that that you can get to in a short amount of time, just go to those colleges. And that's not necessarily for the student to like really look into the school, but to feel what a visit is like, to understand what college looks like. Yeah, that college may be in your backyard and never on your radar. However, it is a college campus. You are going on a college tour. You are learning what college is experiential, an experiential learning type of setting. So you're experiencing the college. So I always try to tell parents like start there. If you want to do some things, over the summer between 10th and 11th grade, quick day trip, so that you can get those visits under your belt. When it comes to junior year, now you've developed a list. You developed kind of where you want to go and what you want to do, and that visit list may still be long. I think where junior year becomes a little bit more important is that you visit the regions where you want to be. Think about schools that are really on your radar. Junior year is important in a sense that a lot of schools open up interview opportunities and other ways to show demonstrated interest and connect. That's when you begin to plan those things, because not only does that help in the application process, which I'm assuming you will talk about later in one of these series, but it also allows for more education and understanding of the universities or colleges that you plan to apply to. So when you visit the school, I think 10th grade, ninth grade is early but good. But I think important is probably in the junior year. So maybe the fall break of the junior year, the spring break of the junior year. If you're fortunate enough to have days off and are able to go at any other time, I think that's a time where you are able to kind of visit the longer list. And it should help if you are strategic about the places that you're visiting. This should help narrow down your list to a manageable, this is kind of where I'm going to apply list. And then the third round of visits, this is where you go to kind of specific calculated institutions. These are the institutions that you now make the decision that I could see myself here. I could thrive here. These students will serve me. These institutions will serve me in a way that will prepare me for my professional life post graduation. And then you go there with the sense of really investigating what the community is like, what the resources are like, how students are existing on those campuses, because this is where you are beginning to really envision yourself on these colleges, on these college campuses. I think subtle nuances that I'll share is that this is also a time where you can connect with specific departments and your regional territory manager. You can connect with, if you have athletic aspirations, coaches. You can connect with club and intramural sports leaders. I think a place where people miss a lot of the times is that on the website of all of these colleges are the email addresses of everybody who works there. And you're able, if the college is doing it right and has the capacity, to reach out and ask questions specific um, to your situation. And to be fair, those who welcome it really give you the insight that you need to make the decision to apply to these institutions. So really dive into the institutions to more so in that junior year, spring break, fall break, take those visits, do your research. Also look for opportunities to spend overnights or fly-in visits or things like that, because certain colleges offer an opportunity to spend a weekend, go to class, um, live life as a college student on their respective campuses. So researching those opportunities as well, and a lot of the connection that you might have with your college counselor will help in this space. Um, but now that you're in that junior year, you've created a list that you're going to apply to in the fall of your senior year. I think the final kind of visit experience is one more connection with your top five. I won't say go back and visit because you continue to spend money and all those type of things, and it might be difficult with your time. But make one more connection in that senior year. Interview, um, email, call, um, do whatever it is, virtual events, do whatever it is to get that final understanding of those institutions that you can get so that when you are choosing to apply, you have the institutional knowledge, you understand what that space is for you and what college will look like in that sense. And then you have kind of your list, or you have the you should have, after doing all of those things, your final list of colleges that you should apply to. Now that is the plan, right? That is what it looks like. A lot of it's based on the connections that you make to the institutions. But widening it back out, what are you looking for in your experience? I think what the 4 points that I think should drive that is the type of institution. Um, I think the distance from home, or closest or closeness to home, or the ability to get to and from the college. I think that's a subtle nuance. Are there trains, planes? Can you drive? Those type of things, so that you can, you know, visualize getting to the space, to the college and back home if you need to. The commitment to the student. I think what I've found is that institutions' goals are to help students thrive. The curation of a community through the admission process, if it works properly, will provide will kind of produce, is the word I'm looking for, produce a community that, for those who are at the institution that they're at, the ability to thrive. So, example, where I work now, we're a small private liberal art college that really emphasizes student agency and leadership and voice. And you find that through our process and things like that, the community embodies that. I won't go into my admission kind of spiel because that's not why I'm here, but through the research and through the experiences that you have in this application process, you should hopefully be able to realize that you'll have the ability, but the commitment of the institution is there. And then finally, which is probably super important, is think about the outcomes. You are going to college to get an education and things like that, but in our world, like, you got to get a job, or you got to go and do things after, graduation and things like that. So think about the outcomes of the institutions and what the return on investment is, and all of those kind of technical things that you should be thinking about, especially if you have, you know, professional school, aspirations. If you want to go into research, or if you are looking to be an artist, like, specific institutions will cater to those things. So thinking about the outcomes is also very important. Now that the plan that's really what should drive how you should apply to college. That is how you should choose your college. That is what you should do in this process. Tangentially, make sure that your relationship, if you can have one, with your college counselor is a strong one. And we recognize that some of you may go to large public high schools, and that's not the case. But do the best that you can. Also, make sure that the family is involved. However, make sure that the student is the leader. I think I think this process should funnel or filter through the desires of the 17, 18-year-old student. These are the people who are going to be there. I am a parent and I, would love for my daughter to go to William and Mary. However, William and Mary might not be the space for her. And I think that taking a back seat, a passenger seat, I shouldn't say a back seat because let's be real. There's a lot of important parts of the college search process that parents need to be aware of. But taking a passenger seat so that when the decision is made, it's not your decision; it's your students. So I gave a kind of 1,000-foot level action plan that should help in the process. Thinking more about the nuance of the application process, affordability is a major part of the application process. Doing your best to understand what financial aid, what merit-based scholarships, what grants versus loans, what 529 plans. A lot of the times that's a foreign language to families, especially those who may be in the first generation college going situation. But going back to an earlier point, the website has emails of the financial aid officers. Connect with them if you don't understand. Because the truth of the matter is college is a very, very expensive decision to make. And this can drive me down another rabbit hole, but affordability is a big part of the college going experience. Think about the possibility of graduate students versus undergraduate only institutions. What are you looking to be? How are you looking to be served? Knowing that research opportunities at large flagship institutions typically give their research opportunities to graduate level students because they're there to do research versus an undergraduate only institution where all of the professors are still tasked with the same type of requirements for tenure, but they rely heavily on the undergraduate students. So thinking about those nuances, thinking about single gender institutions. There are all male assigned at birth, all female assigned at birth institutions. Are those things that are interesting to you? Do you want Greek life? Do you want, large football Power Five? These are all factors, and there are other things. Are you an artist? You want to go to a conservatory? Do you have, are you looking to be in the middle of nowhere where the college is the town and the town is the college? These are all things that hopefully really drive the very narrowing part of the college search process. But all of those things are consideration. So as much direction as I can give you, your individual experiences are going to be what they are. Because the fact of the matter is that you as the student, you as the family, have unique experiences that you're looking for. There are services that you can think about and how those are accessible. Accessibility itself, if you have, physical kind of ways that you need help, not help, but ways to physical accommodation needs. All of those things are part of the thought process. And through the plan and the visits and things like that, these are things that you should walk away from those visits understanding. From that, I think that is really how to choose a college. I think how to choose to where to apply. And then what you do once you apply, I can go on another tangent about that. But I think I talked like 25, 30 minutes straight. And the hope is that this is more of a conversation than it is me talking at you, because that is just how I operate as an admission professional. So I definitely want to open up the chat to questions that you might have. And then maybe we could converse more from there. But that is really, in a nutshell, how to apply to college. I think if I'm leaving you with the final statement, is that the process begins and ends with you as the student. You need to figure out what your needs are. You need to know you the best that you can and how you perform and what makes you thrive and what will help you um, in this college search process. And what will happen naturally is that the places where you can thrive and where you need to be will end up on that list. So, are there questions that I can answer for you?
I have a question to get us started. I know everybody's taking in all that great information you just gave them and processing it and hopefully taking notes. We're all, if we're alumni, we're married students, and I know the type of people that we are. So the question I have to start us off is, you mentioned earlier that most people want to jump to considering major or programs as a large aspect of where their student decides to go. But we all know through some experiences that changing your major is a regular part of being a student and deciding what you want and structuring how life looks post-graduation. So in your opinion, where should that sit on the list, or how much magnitude should you give to programs?
Um, so I think a lot of weight falls into academic interest, more so program. Because, like you said, students are very much so going to change majors. At the college, I changed my major 4 times. I thought I was going to be a doctor, didn't like blood. I thought I was going to be an accountant, took calculus, landed on history because I like to talk and read and write books. But it's inevitable that people are going to find their way in those institutions. I think where you can kind of navigate that space is um, finding those academic areas on the list of college of majors that colleges offer. Um, you may have more than one passion. You may not know exactly what it is that you want to do um, as a going into college. And I think the beauty of the college search process is that there are colleges that know that that's the case. And if they know that that's the case, and you know that that's what you're looking for, those are colleges that you should look into. Like the college, we had our general education requirements. So you were going to take classes all across the whole academic offerings or arenas. So you were going to have classes everywhere that could help, direct. You have advising when you come in to kind of think through those passions and things like that. So if that is something that you know going into the process is that you don't have a straightforward area of study that you want to be in, then look for colleges that can cater to that. Again, going back to the commitment to the student. We're well aware that at 17, 18 years old, you could very well want to be an engineer. And then at 19, 20, after you've, experienced 2 years of college and have had some maturing experiences, now want to be a nonprofit leader and serve your community. Those changes happen often. But when going through the college search process, look to see if those are occurrences that have happened. Talk to current students. I think I failed to mention that, but talk to current students or find a way to connect with current students if you can, because they'll tell you those nuances and experiences that help them, find the space that they're in. Also, think about applying to colleges that have, the opportunity to double major, because you might not be able to decide between two areas of study. And oftentimes, students are able to double major. So think about all of those things come up in the college search process. I think that that's why it causes a lot of stress sometimes, is because it's so vast and what's offered and what students can do. But to answer the long answer to your question is that be sure to be aware of the many offerings that the colleges have, and also inquire about how advising works and what measures those institutions take to help you navigate being undecided.
Okay, so we have one in the chat, and I'm gonna read it because I think it's really good for us to have a part of the conversation and for us to hear. So the question is, it seems that part of generating an initial list of schools is looking at the description of the previously admitted class to estimate if a student is a competitive match. But because of many, maybe even most schools have recently adopted a test optional policy, this means that the range of published test scores for admitted students may only represent a certain portion of admitted students. So this leads to two questions. The first question being, do you have advice for students for how to weigh current test scores when deciding if a school might be a good match?
I do. I think the first thing you need to do is think about how it represents you as a student. Now, to be fair, the test score is a part of the application process, but its predictor on success sometimes could be overrated. But if colleges are requiring test scores, which some are going back to, I think the advice I would give is really research the middle 50%. We give that range solely because it's usually where successful applicants fall. So think about that middle 50% range. Once you look at that middle 50% range, compare it to your test scores, and if you fall near the top of it, the advice would be to submit if you feel like it represents you as a student accurately. If you fall at the bottom or below it, and those institutions are truly test optional, then don't submit if you aren't comfortable submitting. Now, I can't tell you not to submit or when to submit. That is not my job, because the truth of the matter is it's your choice. But I think in those instances, especially at test optional schools that test option that student at test optional school, those test optional schools are test optional. I'm repeating myself, but at test optional schools, speaking from my experience, when we review applications, we don't see the test score, and we don't consider it, and we can't consider it compared to somebody who does submit. So even if somebody submits from your high school, that is a totally separate application. I do not compare or contrast. We don't see it. So I think my advice would be to, one, know if that accurately reflects you as a student. That test score you believe is your best work, is what you believe you can do, and you're going to live with that test score. Then do your research on the middle 50%, and then think about kind of where you fall in proximity of the top and the bottom. Usually, the middle 50% is kind of the entire. It is inclusive of all successful applications, especially if they're reporting kind of their incoming class. So there are 25% of students below that or with no test score, or there's 25% of students above that. So if you fall close to the top or near the above and it accurately reflects you, then I would say submit. If not, then it's really up to you. But I think starting at, does it accurately reflect you as a student, is where the baseline should be. But and then the second question there's a second part to that question.
Yes, but you answered it. It was it was asking in terms of considering which factors would a student look at when they decide if they're going to submit the scores or not. I think you answered it perfectly in going into the description of considering if these scores reflect the type of student that they were.
Right. And I'm sorry, I didn't really get into like the test scores and the GPAs and things like that. Because I think I assumed, and I'm sorry about that, that it is you are going to look at colleges that you fit the academic profile. Things that I tell students is that when you apply to colleges, you should apply to colleges that you're going to get denied at. You should apply to colleges that you're going to get accepted at. Because if you do it that way, you've done it right. You're going to find your fit. I think knowing that you're going to find your fit is a big thing. But academically, you do need to look at, the incoming class and what's offered there. knowing the nuance if they recalculate GPAs or take GPAs as is, that can affect middle 50% ranges and things like that versus, 4.0 scale or not. Realizing what type of school, what type of high school you go to, and how your GPA looks in the content and context of your high school setting. Those things are important as well. But that should be a part of your application or college search process as well. I just assumed that, and that was not good on my part. Sorry about that.
No, you are fine. So our next question is, it's pulling you into the conversation too, Macy. For all three of you, when you were looking at schools, was there a factor that you put a lot of emphasis on when looking at schools, but after attending college, you realized you put a little too much emphasis on?
I can start. My college search process was a little different than most. I was a recruited athlete and came to the college to play football. So in my college search process isn't going to be um, similar to most. What I did look for in the schools that I was being recruited by is the academic rigor and how it'll prepare me for life after football. Did I think football was going to be done when I graduated college? No, but it was. And fortunately for me, in choosing the College of William and Mary and the academic preparation that it did for me, and the personal preparation and the cultural preparation and all those things that the college did on the back end for me, I made a great choice. But my college search process was very different. And it's interesting being an admission professional, having had the college search process that I had, because there are things that if I knew when I was going through the high school process, would I still chose college? Obviously. But I would have been able to operate in college differently. But my process was just so different than most that it doesn't necessarily relate directly. But great question.
Yeah, I would say this is pretty, I guess, kind of very general advice. But one thing that I would kind of keep in mind and that I wish I could tell my younger self going through the college process is not to be worried if there isn't. I feel like you hear a lot that like you're going to step on campus somewhere and you're going to have that moment where you realize this is the school for you and like no other school could be it. And it's especially something I think that people like to use kind of anecdotally on college visits. Like I set foot on campus and I knew this was the place for me. And I think this isn't so much a factor as it is just like general advice, but like don't be afraid if that doesn't happen for you. Don't be afraid if you don't have a school that seems like an obvious choice for early decision or anything like that. I didn't ED anywhere, and my regular decision school that I ended up picking was one of the later visits that I did, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I did not go to William and Mary, but I absolutely loved my experience. So I would say just don't be afraid to kind of like wait and see where your options are and weigh them, particularly if your family needs to include the financial factor as a strong piece of your college decision. Yeah, I think don't be worried if you don't have that kind of moment that you like read about or hear about from college tour guides of like, I set foot on campus and it was amazing. You may have that and you may not, but you're going to end up somewhere fantastic regardless.
Also, that might happen more than one time. College campuses are dope places, and you're going to fall in love probably with a lot of them because they're so unique in their makeup. There's not a time in your life. There is a time, high school, but there's not a time in your life where you're an adult with 18 to 22-year-old people kind of growing all at the same time, equally yoked, kind of academically, and challenging you in a way that you won't be challenged. After college, it doesn't happen like that. So it's probably going to happen a lot of times. But if it doesn't happen, she's right. You're again gonna find that fit.
Yeah, my experience I think was a little different. I had that moment with William and Mary I didn't know where I wanted to go to college and I had no clue what I wanted to major in. So I was applying any and everywhere. So I applied to about 30 schools just because I had no idea what I wanted to do and just kind of let things roll in. And I toured the ones that were most fitting for me and my family that what we could do with both my parents working. And I thought in my head I wanted to go to a really large school with a large campus to have a lot of community. And then I visited William and Mary, and I realized I really love the intimate feel. I love that I could recognize like people's faces as we were changing rooms and doing different sessions, and it wasn't overwhelming, and it felt like home. And so I had the magical moment where I was like, okay, I could go here. I could spend 4 years here, and it turned out great. So I would say keep an open mind, because I thought I wanted one thing, even in the midst of me not knowing what I wanted, and was open to something completely different, and it worked out great. So our next question is, could you explain what a regional territory manager is, and do all schools have these?
So a regional territory manager is the person in the admission office who is responsible for kind of the region where you live. So for me, in my office now, I'm the first point of contact of the regional territory manager for Washington, D.C., Maryland, Philadelphia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and Pittsburgh. So those high schools are the high schools that I'm tasked with knowing the most about. Those are the high schools that I visit. Those are the places where I lead the committee in the application process. I am kind of the expert on that area, and each office typically has a person for each region. That said, not all offices have these, depending upon out at volume and how and the structure of the offices. They could read by major interest. They could read by university. I mean, by college or the university, a college and the university. Excuse me. It varies how applications are reviewed. But a regional territory manager or a territory manager or you know area admission counselor is just the person that is responsible for um, where your high school is located.
Okay, and we have one final question, so I think it's going to be a perfect way to wrap us up. Is the question is, I've heard a lot about expressed interest. How do colleges factor in expressed interest?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it varies. Some schools are really keen on expressed interest and demonstrated interest, and these are just different terms that you'll hear. And what it is coming to high school visits or partaking in virtual experiences or visiting the college. Some schools are looking at that very closely because it shows, you know, the amount of interest you have in their university. And sometimes that is a tipping factor. Other times it is not. It really depends on the institution. Where I work now, we see it. But the best way to show your interest is through the interview. That's probably what has the most impact on the application. But it's really just self is really the definition of you just expressing interest in the institution, and how that's calculated or collected varies at different institutions. Some institutions rely on it a little bit more than others, but it's just you and the ways that you show demonstrated interest. And demonstrated interest looks different to different places. Demonstrated interest could be an email. Demonstrated interest could be a phone call, or demonstrated interest could be filling out a form and getting on a mailing list. It really varies at different institutions, but it's just the amount of connection points you have with those institutions.
Well, that is all. Unless anybody has any last questions they want to. Oh, we do have one. Somebody wants to roll in. What happens if you use two different emails when interacting with colleges? Does that have an impact?
It does impact kind of our systems on campus. I think it'll create kind of two profiles, and then on the back end, operation teams have to merge those 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 profiles. So it could impact, mailing and email systems and things like that on the back end. My advice would be to create an email specifically for the college search, just one email. It could be Jerome Griffin College Search at gmail.com, and use that email for all of the colleges that you're planning to apply to, because we send a lot of communication through email these days. So it could have impact on our systems. But also we'll figure it out on the back end. And that is my college specific. I don't know how it impacts other schools because there are automated systems that they use. But for institutions that I've worked at, the institutions that I'm at now, it just creates multiple profiles in our system. And then when it comes to application submission and things like that, materials can be misplaced, and it causes some things that way. But that is an admission office thing. For you, it'll just be places where you'll get multiple communications. But I think if I give any advice, it's to create an email specific for the college search process, if you can.
Okay, we got two more questions for that rolled in. One
Yeah.
of them is, why do some colleges not accept recommendation letters?
Uh, it depends on the office, but some of the reasons that I've heard is the app volume. It's pretty hard to control, to give the applications as much effort when there's so many. So recommendation letters may be something that those colleges don't ask for, but it varies for different institutions. It's just about the way that the specific office reviews applications. Some admission officers can make decisions off of transcript and essay, and if you submit test scores alone, other officers need more information. The question.
The next question is, does applying undecided to college affect your chances of getting in? I'm assuming this is undecided in terms of major.
Yeah. No. So in the college search process, you will find that in some instances you might have to apply to specific colleges at different universities, and they have different admission review policies that they abide by. But at other institutions, no, because especially liberal arts colleges and things like that, because typically you don't declare your major until your sophomore year anyway. So everybody comes in undecided. I think in your college search process, those are questions that you ask the specific colleges because again they vary so differently. But at liberal arts colleges and colleges that I've worked at, it does not have as much of an impact because you don't declare your major until your sophomore year. But that is a specific type of institution. And talking in generalities, it could have an impact on your application process if you're applying to colleges that require that you apply to a specific major, things like that. Like you can't apply to an undecided college and want to go into nursing or engineering because they have specific stipulations and hours that you have to meet to attain the degree. So those are kind of areas of study that you can apply to, or if the university requires you to apply to a specific college. Usually those who apply are applying to the arts and sciences college, and it's easier to transfer in and out of those colleges. But usually, I would say it doesn't have as much of an impact because you don't declare at most institutions or at the institutions that I've worked at. I won't speak for all your major until your sophomore year. So unfortunately, my expertise or my experience won't allow me to answer that in generalities. But from where I've worked, it doesn't have as much of an impact.
Okay, we have another question I think is going to be perfect to wrap us up. So, in all encompassing and all the information you've given us tonight, which factors do you think are most important to consider when choosing which college to apply to? And they give a few examples in terms of location, course rigor, college specialty, pricing, or etc.
I think the most important factor when choosing a college is understanding how you are going to impact that college and how that college is going to serve you. Finding a college where that meets in the middle. I think it is very much so important to think about affordability. I'm also an advocate for community and how you'll be served in that community. Knowing what that college can do for you as far as financial aid is concerned, or the sticker price and the cost, because this is a very, very big decision. And I think that and it also impacts your life for a while, especially if you have to take out loans and things like that. I think you need to have a full understanding of what this decision is going to do and the impact it's going to have on your life long term, as far as affordability is concerned. And I really think you need to consider the community. Colleges have personalities, and you need to find one that is going to fit your personality. Do you need to be in a space that is more this versus that, that is, you know, you know, friendly to this, not that. You need to know those type of things, because you're going to be spending time there, like months and months on those college campuses. That's going to be home for 4 years, and you want to be in a space that's going to be comfortable for you. Whether and what comfortable looks like is really up to you. Yeah, and finally, think about your family and your connection to them, and how how that how going to college will impact that. That'll kind of answer a lot of the questions as far as region and all those type of things. But those four things I think are the most important part. How the community will serve you and how you will impact the community. Affordability. How you'll be served in the long run, and then kind of how this will impact those who you love.
Thank you so much, Jerome, for imparting us with all of this wisdom and taking your time to participate with us in our webinar series to educate our alumni community. We really, really appreciate it.
All right,
I want to take a moment to thank our attendees today for joining us today and just taking your evening to be here with us and to take in all this wisdom that Jerome has imparted on us. I want you to make sure to keep a lookout for your emails regarding any future sessions we have coming. You should be receiving an email by the end of the week for our next session, which will be on October 2nd with the Common App. We have two professionals from the organization to come speak about the platform and how it can be helpful to you and your student during this process. And also you will receive an email tomorrow in regards to our NPS survey. And in those, I want you to not only take a moment to answer the 4 questions, but also provide some feedback, because I read them, I'm listening, I want to know how we can make these better. And if you have any topic ideas or things that you would like to learn more about as we start to plan for the spring, I want to hear them and know what you all need going forward. So I'm going to share a link for the registration for the next webinar, as well as the recordings for this webinar as far as tomorrow, as well, and the last webinar, which was about 2 weeks ago. So if you have any other questions, I am accessible by email, which I will also put in the chat. And I want to thank you all again for joining us tonight and wish you a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good one.